Good good Sunday morning to you all out there in Facebook world. It's wonderful to be here with you today. Even though we're here virtually, we have our faves always with us. Our wonderful Rev Lynn, Rev Buzz, Marcia, and our special guest speaker, Paulette Jones, and our musical inspiration, Alberto. Yay! And we are all COVID safe here. And after each speaker, this is so graceful, but we're going to be wiping the mic just in case. And knowing, by the way, on this day that it is a day where we honor Martin Luther King. And so we hold those ideals much higher than ever before, right here and right now. And despite all the news, all what you hear, things have changed and continue to always unfold perfectly no matter what. And I know this because I just got this wipe out. And so now I am so happy to bring up Rev Lynn Chaplinoe. Yay! Look at this. We called one another.
We're compliant. We can hug. Yeah, we all wore black and what is it? It smells like a hospital here. Oh, no, we all wore black and white today, so this is great. So good morning, good Sunday morning, everybody. I'm so happy to see everybody here, the throngs, the multitudes, everyone out there. And I hear the cheers coming back. We are the Center for Spiritual Living, Pleasant Valley. We're in Camarillo, California, by the way, and it's a beautiful day here. And our vision is awakening humanity to its spiritual magnificence. How we do that here at our beautiful center is teaching and demonstrating spiritual principles for living a fulfilling and abundant life in an opening, compassionate community. And we have, there it is right there, there's proof. We have the flames of faith. And the flames of faith represent all of the faiths that we know that step forward in love: Buddhism, Sufism, Judaism, Christianity, the Baha'i. There are so many wonderful religions who lead with love. There's that one fine thread that runs through all religions, and that fine thread is love. We are love. We come from love, and we honor our oneness within us all. And it's my pleasure today to be able to read Reverend Betty Ann Brennan's quote for the day, which is a very subtle one. There it is. And you, even out there here and out there in Facebook land, please read this along with me. And I'll do it slowly for you together. Today is a day I am fully present. I know the best can happen to me because it happens through me. I let my words be full of good cheer and positive energy. What a loving power I walk through life with. My consciousness rises with that acknowledgement. Every experience passes, whether I like it or not, whether I call it good or bad. I let go of negative judgment, and I let my life energy be positive, healthy, and fun. And did we ever feel the presence of Betty Ann in reading that? It's just wonderful. We're so blessed to have Betty Ann with us. And now we're also blessed to have the wonderful, lovely, and or talented Buzz Noe with the announcements. I do believe. Yes, I did it right. Don't forget to wipe. What's the buzz? Tell me what's happening. Your name's Buzz. Tell me what's happening.
Thank you for wiping down the mic. Well, here we are. So I want to say, here we are online for the third Sunday of 2022. Our lesson today will help connect God with you. Our guest speaker today is the wonderful Paulette Jones. What it's like to be God will have many spiritual tones. I'm excited to hear what she has to say. For now, here's the announcements for today. At 7 p.m. Thursdays on Facebook Live, our midweek spiritual uplift will boost your divine drive. Our beloved Reverend Pam is the host for this week's session. Turning Dreams into Reality is the title of her lesson. At 4:30 p.m. on the 23rd of this month, Lisa Coffey will be hosting a class you will want. The wisdom of Vedanta enlightens our lives, thereby ensuring that our divine purpose thrives. Swami Mahayogananda is the month's special guest, and his to-be-announced topic will make you feel blessed. You can tune in to Lisa after our Sunday lesson. Constant Contact will have the Zoom info for this uplifting session. Now, do keep in mind that our center is here for you, so please let us know what we can do. The spiritual treatment that we provide will reveal your perfection and allow you to thrive. You can always leave a request by phone or send us an email from wherever you roam. We hope to soon again be able to meet here live in our center that is still dedicated to help us all thrive. Your loving donations will keep our center going so we can be here to keep your wellness flowing. Later we will list the online ways to give, so please donate from wherever you live. And 2 other places where you can lend a hand, so please do give them whatever you can. Ventura County Rescue Mission provides the homeless with much good, and Ventura County Food Share feeds the needy in our hood. And a reminder that our center is part of Ralph's Community Contribution Program. A portion of whatever you spend at the store gives our center a small donation or more. So please do sign up or simply renew, and Ralph's will contribute to us at no cost to you. Our center's code number is JE859. You can sign up at the store, or you can do it online. Another way to help our center for a while is to shop online using Amazon Smile. When you complete your purchase there for the items you got, it donates to our center right on the spot. And finally, tomorrow we celebrate Dr. Martin Luther King Day, so let's take time to thank him as we pray. And what's next up is a YouTube video we will play. It's by Daniel Nahmod entitled, When I Pray. His message will prevent things from going wrong, so I invite you all to please jump in and sing along. Thank you.
Feel my heart go deeper, my heart go deeper into my God. When I pray, I feel my heart go deeper, my heart go deeper into my God. Right here, right now. Right where I am, I pray. Right here, right now, right where I am, I pray. When I pray, I feel my soul go deeper, my soul go deeper into my God. When I pray, I feel my soul go deeper, my soul go deeper into my God. Right here, right now, right where I am, I pray. Right here, right now, right where I am, I pray. feel my love go deeper, my love go deeper into my God. Right here, right now, right where I am, I pray. Right here, right now, right where I am, I pray. Right here, right now, right where I am, I pray. Right here, right now, right where I am, I pray. When I pray, I feel my heart go deeper, my heart go deeper into
That was absolutely beautiful. So this is the perfect time for us to go deeper. This has been a very energetic morning so far. Now let's bring it all in. Let's close our eyes. And as I close my eyes, the first thing I'm aware of is this music. This music which brings me closer and closer to my God. In this presence of the Creator, I am aware of love and music and generosity and creativity and ingenuity and love. It's all God, and it's all right here. And so I take my thoughts deeper, and I bring my truths deeper into this place where God guides and directs me perfectly, impeccably, lovingly, into this space where I am open and receptive to new ideas and new ways of thinking and new ways of being, all expressing God, all expressing my good. So I step forward right now in this moment, mentally and spiritually. I open my heart and my awareness to everything that's being said today. I'm so excited to hear what Paulette has to say. It's always wonderful. It's always exciting. And so excited to be here in the presence of our spiritual leader, Reverend Pamela Gagan. How blessed we are. So very blessed. I'm grateful for these loving truths of this loving spiritual community, our guest speaker today, and everyone present, this wonderful spiritual team. I release these loving truths into the law of mind. I allow divine mind to take care of every sacred detail while I enjoy this beautiful, expressive, expansive service. And together we say, and so it is. And so it is my pleasure to continue this wonderful expressiveness of God as Alberto Del Pino.
Instead of my guitar gently weeps, I weep. That you made me weep, and I weep because if I could come back, I would have that skill, that wonderful musical ear and skill. Thank you. Yeah, there's still time. There's still time. It's not over till it's over. Yes, that's right. Thank you, Albert. I'm in tears. I gently weep. Thank you very much. So it's the talk that Paulette's doing today is what it's like to be God. And I, after all this beauty, I'm just going to tell you an old joke about little Johnny who is always in trouble. And so the parents concerned about him. He's always in trouble. He's always doing something awful. So they take him in to see the minister. And they say, we want him to know how powerful he is, and what he does makes a difference. And so the little Johnny sits in front of the minister, and the minister, without saying anything, says, "Where is God?" And Johnny doesn't say anything. He's just absolutely petrified. And the minister raises his voice more, "Where is God?" And again, Johnny's just petrified. And then the third time, the minister yells, "Where is God?" Johnny runs out of the office, and the parents follow him and said, "Oh my God, what happened?" And he said, "I don't know, but God's missing, and they think I took him." So, So, what is God? God is in, through, and has us. So, I'm going to start with a couple quotes, and then we'll go in to connect to where is God. So, God is all there is, said Ernest Holmes. God includes everything, all possibility, and all action, for spirit is the invisible essence and substance of all form. We can no more not be without spirituality than we can do without food, shelter, and clothing. And that was from our founder, Ernest Holmes. And then this is someone named Sunday Adela. To understand God's love is to mirror it in the midst of a world full of hatred. And right now we're in a world full of upturn. I don't want to say hatred, but this is the time when we need who we are most, our spiritual selves. And you may call God love, you may call God goodness, but the best name for God is compassion. For God is not present in idols. Your feelings are your God. The soul is your temple. And I'm going to end with two quotes. One from C.S. Lewis, and is, we may ignore, but we can never evade the presence of God. He walks everywhere incognito, in and through and as us. So, but this is Oscar Wilde, who I love, and he said, I think God, in creating man, somehow overestimated his reality, or his ability. Oh, so let us just go within, right here and right now. And as we take all the good this morning in, and the joy of being with you, together, whether online, in person, knowing that the words that I speak are the power and presence for all to embrace, along with the music that embodies it in even deeper ways. And in this moment, in this oneness, in this presence, I am aware that everything on this planet was created through the power and the presence of the one soul, expressing perfectly through us. So today, in these times where things seem uncertain, there is one certainty, and that is that God lies within, expressing in and through each and every one of us. But we have choices, and so the choices I make, I know my words have power, my thoughts have power, and I vision higher. I let go, let God, and have the outcome expressed in greater ways than ever before. And so I hold anyone who needs a prayer here today in my heart, and see the highest and best, not knowing, not outlining what that is in the outcome, and calling it good and very good. And together we say, and so it is. And now it is my honor one more time to introduce Alberto. Yay! Huh? Again. It's so hard. Thank you. Thank you so much. And now it is my honor to introduce our speaker, Paulette Jones, brilliant author, teacher, comedian, and we're so happy you're with us. And so it is.
This over here. God bless you. And I'm gonna pick this up. Okay, so I can move around a little bit, but I'm not going to move too much. Anyway, I'm so happy to see all of you today, and I'm glad to be here. I'm blessed by your presence. Today, I want to talk to you about what is it like to be God? That's an amazing question. When in the West, we think of God as an entity, a being that is omnipotent, omnipresent, omniscient, eternal, formless being. So what is it like to be an eternal, omniscient, all of those things in a formless being? Because after all, we are stuck in these forms, right? So maybe a little difficult, and I'm going to talk to you. I'm not smart enough to figure it out by myself. We had to look back through antiquity, and I'm going to focus today primarily on a guy named Augustine, Saint Augustine, if you will. And he is one of the early church fathers. His dates are 354 to 430. And he, like it or not, or even know it or not, we are all Augustinians. That may be a surprise to you, but he left us such a rich tradition, such a rich body of work that it influenced not only the formation of the Christian church, but the formation of Western society in and of itself. That's quite an accomplishment. And outside of the Bible, Augustine is believed by most theologians to be the most significant person in all of Christian history. The most significant. He gave us all kinds of things that you may not be aware of where they came from, but they came from Augustine. If we can get the next, the restless heart. Here's some of the ideas. He introduced the idea of the restless heart. He talked about his own in a book called The Confessions, which was actually about 12 or 15 volumes. I can't remember the number, but it doesn't matter. What he talked about was the restless heart, that he was on this journey of earth and he was wandering meaninglessly. He felt lost from God, separated from God, and he talked about the idea that to love God is to love something eternal, and it will bring us eternal happiness. But to love anything else is temporal, and it will bring us only temporal happiness. And so that concept about the restless heart came directly from Augustine in his collection of books called The Confession. The next thing he gave us is this idea about an internal presence of the divine, about God within us, not as something external out there. It is something, God is a presence within us. It is also something out there because God is the totality of all that there is. But he talked about it specifically about it being a presence within. That idea comes from Augustine. And he gave us one other thing that is connected. Oh, wow. We skipped that. Time goes good. I got to talk a lot faster. So one more back. Yeah, we want to go to How Sweet the Sound. There, that's perfect. Great. All right, we're back on track. You ever see the idea about grace? That came directly from God. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound. That came directly from Augustine. And he was talking about this internal presence of God, and God takes an active participation in our lives and fills us with this concept of grace, where God gives us love and support and direction, that God actually takes an active role in our lives through this concept of grace. That came from Augustine. The next thing he gave us, there's a whole bunch of them. I'm going to only cover a few of them. Free will and destination, and predestination. When we think about that, we think about Calvin. Calvin borrowed that from Augustine, and the roots of his philosophy gave birth to what would eventually be these concepts of free will and predestination. He was greatly influenced by the ancient Greeks, and this idea about free will. Aristotle talked about choice, but for the first time ever, Augustine connected that to the soul, to the internal being, the internal presence of God, that we have free will. And as far as predestination, God, we're going to heaven or hell, whichever one it is, and God knows that. But it isn't like God God is sentencing us there, and it doesn't matter what we're doing. It's just that God is omnipotent and omniscient and knows everything. He knows exactly how our lives are going to turn out. And so from that perspective, we're predestined. But the Calvinists kind of twisted it a bit and said, it doesn't matter what you do in life. You're going to heaven or hell because God decides that. So Augustine, that's a different philosophical perspective. Augustine believed that it does matter what we do in this life, and the only reason we are predestined is because God knows how it's going to turn out in the end. Another thing he gave us is this idea about expressionism, that how we move, how we gesture, how we speak, the things that we do express our inner soul, our inner being, and that would eventually give birth to the form of art known as expressionism. So, and there's actually a scientific family that is also talks about expressionism. So he really had a lot of influence into our lives. And one other thing he gave us was this concept of sin. Sin, he borrowed that from an archery term. Sin actually meant to miss the mark, so to speak. And that word had never been used in terms of the soul. And what he says is that sin is falling away from God. It is wandering out of the light and into the darkness, and that it separates us from what we love and what we desire, and separates us from our happiness and separates us from God. That idea of sin outside the area of archery was a product of the mind of St. Augustine. If we could turn to the next slide, I just want to give you a little information about who he was. Could you, one more bullet there? The life and times in a fading empire. Again, his dates are 554 to 430, and that was just at the fall of the Roman Empire. Roman Empire fell in 476 AD by most accounts. And he lived in northern Africa. That's that area down there. The yellow area below in the lower corner is the Sahara Desert. Today, the Sahara Desert has moved much further north. And but at the time, down in that lower area down there, it's known as a diocese, the Diocese of Africa. By this time, Roman Empire had turned to a Christian empire, and they broke up different parts of the empire into these things called dioceses. And down there, this was the grain belt for the Roman Empire, down just in that area down there. And that was the grain, that fed the Roman Empire, because the land there was very fertile before the Sahara Desert continued to move forward. And now that area is very not fertile at all. But back in the day, it fed the entire Roman Empire. And he was born into a family, very well-known, wealthy family. His father was a pagan, but his mother was a very, very devout Christian. Her name was Monica, and the Catholic Church refers to her as Saint Monica, and the Franciscan monks, the missionaries named the city of Santa Monica after, of course, Augustine's mom. So the next thing, he wrote something, he introduced a term to Western civilization known as the soliloquists. He wrote a book, and at the very called the Soliloquists, and at the very beginning of the book, he apologizes. He made the word up. It never existed before. So Shakespeare, you talk about the soliloquies, thank Augustine for that concept idea. He says at the very beginning that he was trying to use a new word. He had to invent a new word because the dialogue that he was carrying on was never really given a name before. A lot of people talk to themselves, but he talked to himself in a very unique way. There's only two characters in the book. It's Augustine, and he's talking to who or what? We don't really know, but it's a character by the name of Reason with a capital R. And so he's talking about reason, and Reason says to Augustine, what is it that you want to know? And Augustine's reply is, I want to know God and the soul. So Reason says, that's it? God and the soul? And he says, yes, that's what I want to know. And so Reason tells him to pray. Get this. Reason tells Augustine that if he wants to understand the link between the soul and God, he must pray. And so Augustine writes this, and he writes this beautiful prayer, and he And out of the book that he wrote about this experience, he came up with the next bullet, which is the question, can religion be philosophically satisfying? There's a lot of church doctrine, and he was one of the church fathers, by the way. The church fathers looked at the Bible and extrapolated information from the Bible and created church dogma. As an example, in the Bible you can read about, in the Old Testament, of course, you can read about God, and in the New Testament you can read about the Holy Spirit and about Jesus. And so they took this idea that God is referred to in different ways and brought it all together, and the church doctrine that emerged was the Holy Trinity, the idea of the Holy Trinity. Again, that comes from Augustine and a few other church fathers, that idea. So he asked the question, can religion be philosophically satisfying? And when he was 19, he was being groomed for greatness, right? And one of the major things that was required for someone who was groomed for greatness back in the day was to be an orator. And so at 19, he would later write in the Confessions about his encounter with the writings of this guy, Cicero. Cicero was a Roman senator and a Roman philosopher, and he wrote a great deal about philosophy. And one book that he wrote, which is the next bullet, it was the Hortensius was the name of the book, and it was an exhortation to do philosophy, to seek wisdom for the love of wisdom. That's what philosophy means, love of wisdom. And so he extorted, he claimed that the only way to get to real truth is to use philosophy. And this greatly influenced Augustine. He said later in the Confessions that this set him on a path to search for the meaning and use philosophy. And again, can religion be philosophically satisfying? That's kind of the central question he's working with in this regard. And he got his inspiration from Cicero. He would write later that reading that book changed his entire life and set him out on a path of wonder. The next bullet here is he was searching for wisdom. So what did he do? He turned to the Bible and he read it and he threw it away. He didn't like it at all. He says, this is so poorly written. Remember, he was reading philosophers at this time, Cicero and all these. About whether philosophy can be, religion can be satisfied. Philosophical perspective. And he said, it ain't in the Bible. It isn't in the Bible because it is not a religious question. It is a philosophical question when we ask about what is the nature of an omniscient, omnipotent, omnipresent, eternal, formless being, because that's generally what we believe God to be. So he threw away the Bible and he went on this quest. And the quest led him to the Manichaeans. At that time, there were many different Christian sects. The Catholic religion, Catholic means universal, and so when I'm using Catholic, I'm not talking about the Catholic religion as it is today. The word just means universal, and that was far before, long before the Protestant Reformation under Martin Luther King and all the other people that followed. I mean, Martin Luther. Here I go, Martin Luther King is on my mind. Anyway, he wasn't there at the time, just to clarify. So there's this area of the Manichaeans. He searched for the Manichaeans, and he did it because of this bullet, which is they were materialist, dualist, and rationalism. They were materialism because the Manichaeans, again, he's searching, can religion be philosophically satisfying? The Manichaeans were materialists, which means they believed that God was a physical entity. Indeed, because of their influence by the ancient Greek philosophers, they believed that God was the sun. The sun was God, Apollo, you could think of. That God was the sun and Jesus was the moon. They also said that life is dualist. Dualism they believed in, and that means that the universe and the world particularly is composed of two different things, the good and the bad, the evil. And they said that the evil rebelled and captured the good and imprisoned it as our souls in these disgusting pus bags that we refer to as our body. They thought that the bodies were filthy, that the universe, the physical universe was bad, and the spiritual universe was good, and that the bad imprisoned us, our souls, inside of these things. And they were rationalists, and they were rationalists from the perspective of, they said, you guys, you Christians, what you call yourself Christians, you can't rationalize anything. You have to accept church dogma. But we can rationalize stuff. And so he shows up and he meets the leader of the Manichaeans, which was a guy named Faustus, and Augustine debated him and asked him questions, and it later turned out that, next vessel, he referred to him as questioning an empty vessel. That's kind of a phrase today. We talk about you're an empty vessel. I mean, there's nothing going on up here. And that's basically what he said about the Manichaeans. You guys, you don't get it. Because they couldn't answer the questions about rationalism. They claimed to be rational, and yet, under examination by Augustine, Faustus failed miserably. And so he left. He said, nope, you guys aren't working for me. And St. Monica, his mom, was so thrilled and so happy that finally maybe he's got another path that he will seek. And what he did was he went to the next slide. He went to Milan. Milan, at the time, was the seat of the center of Christianity. They had moved the Holy See from Rome to Milan because the Vandals showed up and destroyed Rome, pretty much, Rome proper. They killed thousands, and that's what the Vandals do. So he ran into this guy. Now, when I first saw this picture, and I was telling Marcia earlier today, kind of looks like the guy who sleeps next to the dumpster behind the supermarket, but I'm pretty sure it ain't him. Pretty sure it's St. Augustine, but it looks just like that guy. I can't figure that out. So he runs in. One of the reasons he went to Milan, Augustine went to Milan, was that when he was a child, his family betrothed him to a young girl of a noble family in Milan. And so he said, well, the Manichaeans, blow, and so I'm going to go up to Milan, and meet my fiancée again, that sort of thing. And he ran into this guy. This guy is a guy named St. Ambrose. And he thought St. Ambrose was one of the most amazingly smart people he'd ever run into. And so the next bullet says that they established a relationship. Ambrose, who was the bishop of Milan at the time, that's separate from the Pope, but he was the bishop of Milan at the time. And he was an intellectual giant, according to Augustine. And they started to talk about things. And one of the things they wanted to talk about was exploring major questions. And again, the three major questions that Augustine was looking for is, what is it like to be a formless entity? What is that like, an eternal formless entity? What is that like? And Augustine didn't really have the answer. And the second one, what is it like to be omnipresent? How can something be everywhere at the same time? And the third thing he wanted, the question was, unde mal, whence comes evil? What is the nature of evil, and where does it come from? And so these three philosophical questions, they engaged in hours and days and months of speaking among themselves. And they finally turned to a group known as the Neoplatonists. Plotinus was alive, a Roman philosopher, about 100 years before Augustine. And what he did was he looked at all the writings of Plato. Plato wrote a huge amount of stuff. Socrates wrote absolutely nothing, but Plato was a student of Socrates, and so Plotinus gathered all the writings of Plato, systematized them, categorized them, commented upon them, and released to the world what we refer to as Neoplatonists. And so Ambrose knew this group of philosophers known as the Neoplatonists, and he and Augustine went to talk to these Neoplatonists because they were the smartest folks he'd ever met, pretty much. And finally, perhaps they could give him a response to this issue about, can religion be philosophically satisfying? He thought, if I could get to the idea about religion being satisfactory from a philosophical perspective, then maybe I can come closer to understanding what is it like to be an eternal, formless being. And so he set out on this path. The next slide talks about the Platonist response. So there's an idea about Platonic knowing. Plato talked about different ways of knowing things. We can know things by experience, and we can know things by just our imagination, our minds. And there's two different kinds of knowings that they referred to, and they are sensible versus intelligible. What they thought was that the things that I can see with my senses, I can touch this and I can touch this paper and all of this, probably shouldn't be touching all that stuff, huh? Anyway, but I can touch those, I can see things, I can hear them, I can taste things, I can feel things. All of those things, the world out here, like the chair, is a physical world, and I know them through my senses. But there's a whole other way of knowing things, and that's what they referred to as intelligible, things that we come to know without use of our senses. And so there's this dual world. Plato talked about the world of forms. The world of forms is imperfect. That chair is imperfect. It's perfect, it's okay for sitting, and it's just great, but it's imperfect. But the chairness, the idea of the chairness is not the idea of building a chair. Everything comes with a thought first before it comes into this physical world. That thought is what's known as intelligible, and it goes way beyond imagination. You can imagine things you've never seen. You can imagine a unicorn. I'm guessing you've never seen one other than like in a child's book or some graphical representation of a unicorn. So you can imagine that, but that's different than trying to imagine God, because God is ineffable. Knowing God is ineffable, and the way we come to that is through this knowing in a different way, the idea about something that is intelligible. And so there's a key Platonic metaphor that they use called the mind's eye. The mind's eye, that's how we see things, according to the Greek philosophers. We see things through our mind's eye. Our mind can wrap around something that is ineffable, something we can't communicate, but we can come to a greater understanding of it. And this key Platonic metaphor, the mind's eye, which we've all heard of, came actually through the Neoplatonists to Augustine, and Augustine, through his writings, made that popular and made it, just blended that into Western society. Now, I'm going to go back a little bit in history here, the next slide, because we want to talk about this guy. Any idea who that is? That's Pythagoras. Now, we might think of Pythagoras as a mathematician, but he wouldn't even know what that word meant if we said that to him, because there was no such thing as mathematics at the time. It was all philosophy. Philosophy then broke out. As a matter of fact, science was not science until the 19th century, when it was, before that, it was called natural philosophy. And in the 19th century, it merged into the English language as science. So for all those years, though, it was natural philosophy. So basically, philosophy was the love of wisdom, and it was a love of all sorts of wisdom. And the next bullet talks about the religion of the Pythagoreans. Would you ever hear that? We talked about the Pythagorean Theorem, a squared plus b squared equals c squared, where c squared is the hypotenuse across from the right angle in a rectilineal triangle. Well, some of us talk about that. Anyway, so in high school, we were kind of forced to talk about that stuff. So what he did was he created a religion based upon forms, and he thought that forms were a representation of absolute truth. And so to be a Pythagorean, to join it, they would give you a form, triangle, circle, something like that, and tell you to think about it for 5 years and never say one word in 5 years. 5 years, never say a word. I can't do that for 5 seconds. Let me try. See, I told you it didn't work. So it was a big there was a big entry to get into this group of the Pythagoreans, and then at the end of the 5 years, they would ask you questions about this form, and if your questions were satisfactory, then you were in, and if not, well, you just wasted 5 years, didn't you? So he talked about the circle. Think about the circle. Think about looking at the circle from the perspective of God. A circle, there's no beginning and there's no end point, right? That a radius drawn from the center of that circle to the circumference is so every point on that circle is equidistance from God. We are all equidistance from God. We are all connected. And furthermore, if you look at it from mathematics, the area of a circle is pi r squared, right? And the circumference is 2 pi r. Now, let's talk a bit about pi. Mathematicians today talk about pi as something that is both transcendent and irrational. It's irrational because pi goes on 3.14275, et cetera, and it goes on forever. If I asked you to write down every single digit of pi, you would never finish. It would go on for all eternity. And that's an irrational number. And it was a transcendent number, they also said, because you can't get to pi with any operation on whole numbers. The only way to get there is through entering the sacred circle. Pi is an amazing term that we have to, it's really difficult even for mathematicians to get their mind around it. So when he talked about this, it tells us that we can never really understand with absolute precision either the distance around a circle, known as the circumference, or the area of a circle. So there's a great mystery in circle. He thought of great mysteries in the Pythagorean Theorem, a squared plus b squared equals c squared. And he talked about it in terms of truth. The truth of any triangle that you can write or create in any way, there is the truth that it exists, but the real truth is the triangle-ness of it, and that truth existed, the next bullet, that truth existed for all eternity. It existed before the formation of our universe, and the truth of it will exist far after the universe is gone. And so Augustine grabbed this and said, wow, if truth can be eternal, and as God is, truth is formless and eternal, well, that kind of gives you maybe a little insight into a formless, eternal being like God. And he was really excited. Finally, he thought, yes, religion can be philosophically satisfying. And again, this guy, Pythagoras, predated Socrates, so it was pre-Socratic philosophy, and then there was post-Socratic philosophy. He existed about 600 BC. So an amazing group of folks, and we never think of them as a religious group, but indeed that's exactly what they thought of them as themselves. And again, if you called them mathematicians, they would kind of scratch their head and look at you funny because they wouldn't know what that meant. Now, there were a few other questions. If we go to the next slide, there were a few other questions. And why don't you just let them all, let's take a, I think there's 3 of them. Yeah. Maybe one more, maybe not. Yeah, there we go. So it talked about the other question that came to mind. Remember the second question. He questioned about the idea of God's omnipresence. How can God be everywhere? You know, like, is God like water in a sponge? Well, that can't be, because it's kind of really it's not distributed evenly. So God can't, is God over there and God over here? Well, you can't really explain God in a spatial universe at all, can you? Because God is non-spatial, you know? So if you can't describe something that is non-spatial in spatial terms. So he also looked about the soul connection and God. That was the major question he asked in that book called The Soliloquies. And at one point, Augustine, when we talk about this idea about God, you know, having a feeling of God within and being separated somehow from God, he talks about an incident that he had in the Confessions. He talks about, he went in, he was meditating, he went deep within, and he was connected. He felt this. He looked up, he described, and he felt the presence of God. He could, what he referred to as sense the presence of God. And it only lasted for a few seconds. But it changed his life. From that point onward, he was this restless heart seeking to return to that brief seconds, those few seconds where he felt connected to God. And he was never able to re-achieve those kind of feelings. But nonetheless, that idea also changed his life, where he went within, had an experience of God, and always tried to get back to him. As a matter of fact, the idea of existentialism is absolutely impossible in the absence of Augustinians. So we talk about Thorin Kierkegaard and Sartre, the existentialists, and those are the existentialists we might be familiar with, but Augustine was the one who created that idea about the restless heart wandering in a meaningless world, kind of, and that's what existentialism was all about. I think there might be one more slide, and I think it's the summary, which means we can get out of here pretty soon. Can you just give me them all? Let's go all the way. I think hold on, keep going, one more, and that's it, I think. Anyway, so the Augustinian legacy. Let's talk about, again, recap some of the ideas. He gave us the idea about sin, about expressionism, which would foster all sorts of things, about duality, about God and the soul, the connection, which would eventually lead to Cartesian duality in 1619. Rene Descartes had this vision, this image, where he dreamed of a radical distinction between the in here and the out here. Augustine talked about the in here and the out there. And by the way, Descartes was the guy who gave us the phrase cogito ergo sum, which means I think, therefore I am. So, and that was heavily influenced by Augustine. So you see, there's so many ways he influenced our lives. And he was an amazing, amazing mind, and really formed not only the Christian dogma, the Christian church, but also had a major impact on Western philosophy and Western society in general, introducing all those terms like sin and free will and predestination, etc. So again, the big question is, what is it like to be a formless, eternal being? And again, he thought, finally, can't get there through religion, can't get there through the Bible, but I can get there, hopefully, through the idea about philosophy, which, again, is a love of wisdom. He talked about eternal truth and looked at the works of the Pythagoreans and talked about the idea of the truth of the Pythagorean Theorem, which was true before the universe existed and will be true far beyond that. And he talked about the connection between God and the soul. Well, if God is an eternal formless being, guess what? Our soul is also an eternal formless being. So is God and our soul the same thing? That question he never really answered to satisfaction. But yet he said, if I can understand the soul, then I can understand the nature of God. And again, he was the first to bring together there were many religious philosophers at his time, but they were not necessarily Christian philosophers. So he was the first one to look at church dogma, the Bible, and the Neoplatonist beliefs and bring them in together and merge them all together to answer the question, what is it like to be God? And that's the end of it for today. Thank you so much. Geez, it was so good to see you. I'm sorry, I have to wipe up here. I got to wipe. The things I do here. So here we go. All right.
Beyond brilliant. Clearly, thank you. Thank you for what. First of all, we're going to invite Alberto up again, but clearly you were in the AP classes. When you said you were doing this in high school, doing all these things. And that was just amazing to me. And this is so simplistic, but all the mystics had those nanoseconds. They connected, and they knew that they knew that they knew. Some carried them through, like Rumi and William Blake. But that was absolutely brilliant. So brilliant, I have to watch it at least 10 more times and take notes. Really and truly, thank you so much. And now, brilliance, our musical brilliance. Yay. You're welcome.
17th century song. 17th century song from my beloved composer Turlough O'Carolan, Ireland. Yes, and it's called Bridget Cruise.
And now it is time to just remind you that as I wipe the mic, just remind you that first of all, we're going to read our offertory together. So together, and in Facebook land too, please read along. Divine love blesses and multiplies all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive. And so it is, and that's the way it is. And again, it's a time to remind you all that when you're not able to come into the sanctuary, and that's for safety reasons, when safe, we want you back out there, to say the least. I want to thank Paulette again. I want to thank Alberto, Buzz, and Lynn. Thank you so much. And here are ways you can give from home to ensure that our light here in Camarillo stays bright. So, Marcia, do you have giving ways, honey? Yes, and through the announcements again. Ways to give. Okay, thanks, honey. Okay, so we hope to see you again, and as Buzz has so beautifully said, you can go and donate online, and you can do it through Zelle. Go to our website, which Paulette creates our website too. Yay, Paulette! And donate online and through the website. So please keep us afloat here, as we say, as we keep your wellness flowing. And now we're going to close with the peace song. And if you're comfortable, come up, please, and sing with us. If comfortable, Alberto, you can stay here. And you know, I'll ask you. Yeah. All right. Paulette, are you comfortable? Oh, yay.
Oh, that's
Thank you.
comfy.
Thank you all so much. And Marcia, thank you.
Thank you,
Marcia.
Marcia.
Thank you, Marcia. And sing along with us. Hum if you don't know the words. I told Marcia, I said, show the people, not the song.
Yes, there is peace on earth, and yes, it begins with me. Yes, there is peace on earth, the peace that was meant to be. With God as creator, family all are we. Let's walk with each other in perfect harmony. Yes, peace begins with me, and this is the moment now. With every step I take, let this be my joyous vow. To take each moment and live each moment in peace eternally. Yes, there is peace on earth, and yes, it begins with me.
And you, and you, and you, and you. And something wonderful is happening to me right now. I know it in my mind. I feel it in my body. I see it in my life. And so it is. Woo!
Thank you all.
Blessings galore. Happy Martin Luther King Day.